Hey everybody, George from Redox here, coming at you from Health Further 2017 here in Nashville. I'm joined today by Chris Chan, the head innovation Imagineer at Mercer LABS. I want to start with the hard-hitting questions. Chris, what did you think of last week's Game of Thrones episode?
You know what? I was actually taking the red eye here to Nashville to get here in time for the eclipse. Okay. So I haven't watched it yet. Don't spoil anything. I haven't seen it. I am caught up except for the last episode. But it's good stuff. They're making tons of progress this season. A little too fast for my own personal liking, but they only have so many episodes left.
We're gonna have to sync up after you watch this episode. I want the hot take.
Yeah.
So first, let's start by telling everyone, what is an innovation Imagineer?
So, truthfully, we did take a cue from Disney because they created the Imagineer moniker first. And at Mercer, when they asked me to create business cards, I typed in that title and it got approved. So I just ran with it. And it gets that reaction from most people, which is a smile and a question, like, what's up with that? And the point is, for us, innovation is important, but creativity is really important as well. And healthcare is certainly clinical and technical, and it's a big, messy infrastructure with lots of different stakeholders. But it's emotional as well. And there is room for artistry and creativity and humanity. It's one of my taglines that I repeat a lot is, I'm hopeful that we will inject more humanity into the ecosystem, because that's where you're going to build trust and rapport and relationship and emotionality and actually get people to engage and participate in their care.
So Mercer Health Labs, can you talk a little bit about what it is, what type of groups you look for? And then I'd love to know about how you look for that humanity or that art element that goes into it, beyond just being another, I suppose, I'll let you talk about it, but accelerator in an incubation lab.
For sure. So the short answer is the labs is like Shark Tank for Mercer. And we work with many employers who offer healthcare benefits to their employees to make their workforce and their families healthier and more productive. And there are all these emerging digital health startups in the market and point solutions. And for our employers who may have challenges in diabetes, heart health, musculoskeletal, pregnancy, cancer, these are all solutions that they're trying to figure out and evaluate the number of startups out there. And so we act as the front line, as that filter. And over the last 2 years, we've evaluated over 400 companies. And so it's a lot of fun, but it's chaotic and sometimes dizzying as we try to make sense of how does this one company differ from this other one? And what's really the secret sauce? And sometimes it gets to that humanity piece of it. And it feels like, for a lot of these emerging companies, they go to market with a product that's 50 to 75% there. It's further along than MVP, minimum viable product, but it's not a full-blown, complete experience because they're young and they're still trying to figure things out. But unfortunately, a lot of that special sauce, humanity injecting stuff is the last 5 to 10% of an experience. It's often stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the products at all, but it's some hook in the experience where as a patient or as a user, it feels intelligent, it feels personalized. I look forward to the next experience because it made me curious, it gave me surprise, some emotional hook, and that's creating rapport and repeatability and engagement.
Fantastic. So if you're one of these groups who is creating a new solution or trying to be an entrepreneur in healthcare, so one, they should keep that in mind when they're the human element and that component. Is there a way that they can engage with you or to reach out to you, or how do you source who you're looking for? Do you kind of, I mean, you know the lay of the land, but is there anything you can tell people who are interested in maybe connecting with Mercer LABS?
Yeah, certainly. So We certainly read the blogs and follow the press releases and all that stuff that's out there. We retain healthy relationships with the VC and investor communities as well. Often,
Bay Area love.
yeah, well, all over
other
the
VCs.
country, absolutely. They use us as a sounding board. We use them as a sounding board just to compare and contrast notes and other players within a specific market. We hear a lot from our client base because we know these young companies are calling on them, and then our clients will turn to us, hey, have you heard of X, Y, and Z company or not? And then we'll set up meetings to evaluate and learn more. And so there's a lot of different avenues to reach out. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn, and I'll respond to messages and we'll set up time.
So you're also, so in the same idea, so you're also an artist, aspiring comedian, YouTuber in the future. So The Art of Chan, check them out, Facebook, Twitter, around the globe. So the idea is in different industries, we've had this growth of, I think there's like the design fund, and then there was another like, let's invest in groups that bring designers on earlier. Healthcare is known for having terrible design, like a lacking. Do you see, is there anything in the industry that excites you about, is there a change happening? Are there some examples of groups that are doing it right? Do you see that same, actually valuing the design at a founder level now breaking into healthcare so that groups like you are more attracted to companies?
Yeah, so there are a few different parts to the question that you asked. There is an innovation framework that another company created. They wrote a book on it, and then we've adapted it into our process. But the key fundamental is looking at the money and the magic. Okay. And so that design element is the magic. And sometimes we see beautiful, shiny products get rolled out. But behind that user experience, there's not a lot of depth. And you may get people to interact and use something, but is the business model built? Is the clinical model built? That's where the money aspect comes into play. Are you getting results? Are you actually improving patient care, not just patient experience? And so we look through both channels. Yes, the magic's important, because if you build an amazing clinical product and no one uses it, then it's a failure. But if you get people to use it and it has no impact on the money side, you're not going to get happy customers, because they're going to look for some return around your product. So that's a basic framework that we use, and we have a bunch of questions to ask from both sides on that. And it's just been such a fun environment to operate in.
I'm really excited that you guys factor that in and it's part of it. It's not just the money, because that's hard for digital health companies in the first place, but it's nice that someone's also thinking about the magic. So one area, because you work so closely with employers, one area that I find really interesting is this entrant as the employer actually being the one who's distributing tools and programs to directly impact health in a way that I don't know if it ever was in the past.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of the employer to impact health and outcomes?
Yeah, certainly. So there's good and bad that comes with the space. So the majority of Americans in the country get healthcare through their employer. And for many large employers, they're self-insured, meaning they're on the hook for the expense. They pay the actual cost coming through the system. And so having a healthy workforce is important, because that translates to satisfaction, productivity, business performance. You can actually measure stock performance and earnings per share, track along healthiness of companies. And so that's why it's important for employers to be at the table. The other positive is employers are smaller and nimbler and can move faster than a health system or an insurance company. And so you create little test beds for pilots and rollouts. And we see these digital health startups acquire customers one by one at scale and reach a tipping point in the market if they're successful. So those are all the good things that come with the employer side. I think the major con that comes to mind is, as an employee, how much do I want my employer to be in my personal business? And for certain things, I might be more receptive than others. So if I'm a truck driver and I have musculoskeletal pain and I look to my employer for support in that category, it makes sense. If I'm a working female within a population and I'm thinking about pregnancy, how is that going to affect my career trajectory and my pay increase and promotion? And there are rules that are supposed to prevent, misuse of that type of information, but that concern still happens. How about on the behavioral health side? If I knew that a leader within an organization was going through some personal emotional issues, does that make them a stronger leader for being transparent and vulnerable, or does it make them a weaker leader because they're not as stable? And there's a lot of stigma in the area. And so employers are trying to figure that out. Interestingly, I think there is some generational change that's occurring where, for better or worse, younger generations are just more open and they put a lot of stuff out there, good and bad.
You can find it.
Right. And so greater receptivity to embracing employer-based programs.
It's an exciting space. So one last thing I wanted to touch on was, there's a quote I found of yours in 2015 where you were saying, in 2015, we're at this point of just information saturation, to the point where it's more important than ever that people find a way to unplug and to take that time for mental health or to check out. We're in 2017. There's only more. Now there's Instagram stories and Snapchat. You can constantly, is that still, or how have you implemented that, or what is your new take on just that total technical saturation? And from a health standpoint, what do we have to do to not just get sucked into it?
It's ironic because for a lot of healthcare, we're throwing more tech at the problem. And we're creating social care networks where your information gets pushed to a provider, a coach, and then they can message back to you. And are we just adding to the problem by doing more and more of that? Especially so as you think about technology blending behind the scenes, like Alexa. You see a lot of people with Echo, and Alexa's always listening for her name in the background, and so it's less intrusive, but more pervasive at the same time. So I do think it is a huge problem. I think internet addiction is a real thing, and we're going to see prevalence of that increase over time, and it leads to not just distraction, but loneliness, because you feel like you want to be somewhere else connected with other people, or you see the awesome stuff that other people are doing because there's a white picket fence syndrome where you just project the good stuff and none of the bad stuff. So it's having some serious social consequences. And I've known people who disconnect, who just don't participate in the social tech environment. And I don't know if that's feasible, really, within today's world. So you need a healthy balance, maybe tech-free zones where you can disconnect, both in your personal and professional workspaces, where you get out a pencil and a pad of paper, and you do things a little bit old-fashioned, and they talk about the power of journaling. And there's a lot of old ideas becoming new again, and not everything has to be tech-enabled to be effective.
Well, Chris, this has been fantastic. So you can find Chris at the Art of Chan online. Anything else you want to tell the folks where to find you?
No, it's a fun, awesome space. There's so much happening. It's just an exciting time to be part of the healthcare ecosystem.
So that's it from Health Further 2017. We'll catch you later.